Okay, today we're going to talk about tips for unleashing your God-given healing with Ginny Brandt. Welcome, Jenny.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
So excited to have you. This is a new topic for our audience, but I feel like it's an important topic and it still is going to tie right in the health world, health and fitness even. So, can you give us a little bit of your background and how you got where you are today?
Well, I was an educator for 32 years, sometimes teacher, sometimes counselor, sometimes administrator, whether I wanted to be or not. And I was always researching and trying to educate myself about so many things. But it was 4 months after my mother actually died from breast cancer, that I accidentally, as my sister said, providentially, found the lump in my breast. I had just completed the Cooper River Bridge 10-kilometer walk run. I walked it briskly. And that night, my ring got tangled in my nightie. And when it did, as I was trying to free it, I felt a lump.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
was kind of in shock, but I said, oh, it's probably a fluid filled cyst. I'd had those before, and I learned not to get upset about those. They were nothing. And so I went to the doctor immediately. And the first shock was, it's cancer.
Wow.
And then the next week, they called back with more news from the test that had come back saying it's not only cancer, it's aggressive. Well, no one wants to hear that.
No.
So it was after I did the MRI that the surgeon called me into his office for the results. And I was there by myself. My husband had dropped me off because he had to be somewhere. And I just didn't see that anything more was going to be wrong. And he looks at me and he said, Ginny, it's worse than we thought. It has planted another tumor. And in addition, it appears to be in your lymph nodes and in different places in your body that we can see from this MRI. In other
Oh,
words, he was saying stage 4 aggressive breast cancer. And let me tell you, nobody wants to hear that. So that drove us, my husband and I both, as we were praying, we said, Lord, guide us. And we felt led to get a second opinion. I looked at that surgeon. I said, I don't feel bad. I feel perfectly fine. I don't see how I could have a stage 4 cancer. And he then showed me the MRI. It looked like a tornado had invaded my body, hence the analogy in my book to the Wizard of Oz. I felt like Dorothy. But I went to get that second opinion. And I just tell cancer patients and people diagnosed with serious diseases, one of the best things you can do is get another opinion. They confirmed that it was aggressive breast cancer, that it had planted other tumors, but they said, we don't know whether it's in your lymph nodes and other parts of your body. What we're seeing on this MRI is extreme inflammation that was caused as a result of a biopsy that went bad. And I didn't even know. Yes, I was bruised. I was badly swollen. I didn't know that wasn't normal. So
hmm.
I was so relieved to get that information that there was hope that it might not be a stage 3 or a stage 4 cancer. We wouldn't know until the surgery was done. But I'm going to tell you, like I said, I was in education. I was a wellness advocate. I spoke in different school districts and at conventions. And I helped revamp our school lunch program and teach all the children at our school health and wellness. And I was known as the health nut in my community and in my school district. And it just didn't make sense that a health nut got cancer, especially an aggressive cancer. So it sent me on a quest to discover, number one, what caused my cancer? Because if I
Mhm.
can figure out some things that caused it, how can I prevent it from coming back? And then number two, every weapon of mass destruction was going to be brought out to save my life. And I wanted to know what I could do to help my doctors beat it and lessen the side effects of all these horrendous treatments. And so that's why I researched so heavily, put my head in the books and into the medical research, interviewed doctors all over the world. I studied with doctors on summits and listened to I must have listened to hundreds and hundreds of doctors speak on summits about cancer, about the immune system. And I searched the scriptures to see what God said. about our health. And I put all that together, including valuable information in nutrition, and it certainly did help me to have a much better prognosis.
So tell me, I did not have time to grab your book yet. Tell us about your book. Is this story all part of your book? Is it all included?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I did not want to be the cancer queen who talked about cancer or wrote a book about it. And the chaplain at the hospital told me, Ginny, consider this a gift. You're an author, you're a speaker. Think of all the people you could help. And I looked at him and I said, I don't want the gift. And he said,
Take
well,
it back.
yeah, take it back. Who would want this? And he said, oh, Ginny, I can see it now. Your next book on cancer. And the first words in the book are going to be, this was the book I never wanted to write. Well, Lindsey, guess what the first words of my book? Yes, this is the book I never wanted to write. But the more I studied, the more I learned, I realized that I was the average American that was missing pertinent information about how my immune system could be affected by many things. And it was making me high risk for cancer, and I didn't even know it. Cancer technically did not run in my family. Breast cancer did not. Colon cancer does. My mother's breast cancer was caused by her taking hormones after menopause. I did not take hormones after menopause. I did not have any of the known 8 risk factors for the breast cancer I got when I was diagnosed. So they did extensive genetic testing and nothing showed up there either. So that's why I researched so heavily. I kept saying, something caused this, and I've got to find out what it is. Not that I'll know everything in this life, but I've got to find out some key things so that when the doctors kill the cancer, and if I can help them kill it and make it more productive, great. But once the cancer is killed, I don't want it coming back.
Right.
So these are permanent lifestyle changes that I made.
Okay, so can we dive into those? I would love to hear. Sorry, I'm just enthralled. That's my pause for a minute. I'm taking it all in because I have so many questions. Just even rewind all the way back to what was some of that insight that kept coming your way and your ahas of, I mean, that's a huge aha to me that you had no family history. Their genetics didn't come back with that. So what
Hey,
was it?
there's something causing this. You know,
Yeah.
my husband and I prayed from the first moments I was diagnosed. He laid hands on me and prayed that God would direct us and that he would provide healing. And I can say he definitely did. There were things that happened that were just of the Holy Spirit. That's all I can say. For example, from the first moments I was diagnosed, we went for a walk to relieve stress. And exercise would be a key part of me getting through the cancer journey with less side effects. Research would later prove that everything I did to relieve stress was the best thing I could have done in so many other ways. So after my first surgery, what did I do? I wanted the catheter out. There were all these tubes attached to my body that would be attached for weeks. And I got up and walked to get the catheter out. They wanted 4 rounds of the hospital floor. I did 18, that was a mile. And then I did another mile. And I'm pulling all these, poles behind me, all these things attached to my body. So it was kind of like a dance, And the nurses were cheering me on. And my surgeon comes in and said, they called me and told me you'd hit a mile. I told them to let you go. As long as you had the energy and the balance, it would only promote healing in your body in about 10 ways. And it did. That afternoon, she removed all the tubes I was to go home with and said, your lymphatic system, by exercising, has taken care of all the drainage these tubes were going to do. You and your husband will not have to babysit these tubes for a few weeks. It just did so many things for me after surgery. And so then I decided, well, I'm nervous about this chemotherapy. So I'm going to walk 2 miles before chemo and 2 miles after chemo. And I had an 8-hour chemo regimen. So it was an all-day thing. And lo and behold, after I finish the chemo and I come through with flying colors and my red and white blood cells and platelets are all back within normal ranges in 6 weeks rather than 2 to 5 years. Then the doctors later point me to this research and they say, did you see all the research in Australia? 30 cancer entities came together to say that exercise is the best thing a cancer patient can do through every part of treatment. And so
Wow.
actually that exercise was pumping my lymphatic system so that the toxins didn't build up and recirculate. And that's when it poisons your system and sends you into sepsis and all these issues. I didn't have any of those problems. And I did well because I was both hydrating, increasing hydration, and exercising on a regular basis. Then MD Anderson did a study with mice that showed that the mice who had a regular exercise routine, I don't mean running a marathon, but they were exercising on a regular basis, did better with the chemo, and it helped the chemo to target the cancer. So exercise, even when
Wow.
I got into, the estrogen blocking pill and the chemotherapy, both can lower your bone density. I was able to, with yoga poses and stretches designed for me by a yoga instructor, to hold my bone density rather than take all the bone density pills and shots, which have side effects. I was able to do it myself. And I was really glad about that, because it's better that your own body do it
Sure.
than those shots and those pills and those things, which sometimes when you break a bone after that, it's hard to recover from. So exercise was my best friend through the entire journey, in addition to relieving stress.
Yeah.
So that gives you just one example added with hydration.
So you're your own research patient here too. Were you able to get a DEXA scan to see your bone density before and after?
I do. And I was already a little bit in osteopenia, just barely getting into it. And then after the chemo was over, they did it. And I went into later osteopenia in one part, and another part, I was right close to the osteoporosis, not quite there, but like 1 point away. And they said, we
Mhm.
have to do something. We have to give you shots. We have to do this. We have to do that. I said, no, wait, wait. And so I did my research and came up with certain supplements to take, as well as vibration platform and, the yoga and the stretching that was specifically designed to target bone density. And when I came back and I got back where I was before, they were like, wow, this is impressive. As I went on, I ended up getting it back better than before I had cancer. Not that it's perfect. I'm 66. My bone density is not going to be great, but I'm able to hold it with bone density exercises, weight bearing exercises, with a yoga routine, with walking every day, and taking certain supplements and things that I eat. And that's important during the cancer journey.
Wow, that is incredible. And again, just so our listeners hear this loud and clear, it's not maintenance just on a regular daily life. Like this is after chemo. This is after things that could have been deteriorating your bone density. If anyone ever needed motivation to move, you are providing it today.
Let me
This
tell you,
is
I have learned that movement is the key to living. It affects every system in your body, as well as hydration. And those are two things that I will never go without. Right now, I've got plantar fasciitis in my foot from a sprained ankle in the other foot, and it's hampering my walking. And I'm so ready to get back to normal walking. I mean, my husband and I can go to Europe and walk 8 to 10 miles a day. Right now, with my foot, I cannot do that. And it's driving me nuts. But
Mhm.
you find other ways to move. You can get on a bicycle, you know, or you can get on one of those ellipticals. So there's always a way to move, even when something's hampering it. But movement is so good for your health.
Yes, and I love how you're taking away the whole element of calorie burn through movement. When individuals can see movement as therapeutic for our brains, for our body, for cancer prevention, or through like it just really defines this is not about going out for a walk to burn 100 calories. That will never be motivating. This is motivating.
Right. My
This
father
is
died from Alzheimer's, and I was his caretaker along with my mom and sister for 5 to 10 years. And I just, uh, that's what made me start walking to begin with years earlier. It's just the fact that I don't want to go down that road. And that is also key, as well as hydration, to the same 8 steps in my book. are the same 8 principles you would use for any autoimmune disease, for
Mhm.
COVID to lessen the symptoms, to build your immune system to fight against it, for cancer, dementia. These are 8 steps. Even though I used it in the cancer journey, they
Yeah.
help ward off so many things. It's just lifestyle habits we all need to develop.
I want every listener to not take themselves out of this talk just because maybe they're not dealing or somebody else is dealing with cancer. Like you said, autoimmune. These are big things that are hindering everybody at the moment. This book pertains to all. Can you go into the water for a second? You obviously did a lot of research with hydration. What were some of your findings with that?
Well, there are things a lot of people don't realize what proper hydration is. It's half your body weight divided by 2 in fluid ounces at a minimum. You have to add to it. Like you're going through chemo, you increase hydration. You're in hot weather and sweating, you increase hydration. You're in higher altitude, you increase. But a lot of people do not know what hydrates and what doesn't. They think because they drink 4 Cokes a day and 4 iced teas, they're properly hydrating their body. They are not. The caffeine, dehydrates. And when they're drinking wine and beer, the alcohol element acts as a diuretic and again dehydrates. So we have to minimize the caffeine. You can have some, but I tell people add an extra glass of water if you drink a cup of coffee. If you drink a glass of wine with dinner, add an extra glass in your water intake. And I also found that smoothies and a lime or lemon dropped in water actually increases hydration. And so that smoothie that I make every day is, it's powerful. It contains 5 to 6 superfoods. It's in my book. It's a banana, chocolate, blueberry smoothie. It prevents Alzheimer's. It builds your immune system. It gives you proper fiber for the gut. It lowers your risk for breast cancer, estrogen fed cancers because of the flax seeds. It's something I put together to just really hit everything. And my husband and I love the taste so much that we drink it nearly every single day to get those 5 or 6 superfoods in. I am really big on using food as medicine. That's one of the steps in my book. This is your field. But when I studied the value of blueberries and the anthocyanins in them and all they do for our body, I'm like, it hits lowering cancer, cutting off blood supply to cancer tumors, found by Dr. William Lee of Harvard University. He's a Harvard medical doctor who does research. Builds your immune system, prevents dementia. All of the Alzheimer's doctors are telling people eat a cup of blueberries every day. So we just get that cup in our smoothie every day. And I use frozen or fresh if I have them, but it's usually frozen organic ones. And so, it's just a staple in our diet now. And it does so much for our body, including our gut lining, because you've got all that prebiotic fiber feeding all that good bacteria. I even put some probiotics, coconut yogurt and a probiotic I get at Costco that's wild organic sauerkraut in that smoothie because it covers up the taste. I hide so many things in that smoothie that most men or women would never eat, but they don't know it's in the smoothie. It's all covered up.
That's awesome. We've talked about some fitness, hydration, food we're going into. What are some other steps that we're missing here?
Well, one of the big steps is using your faith to manage your emotions. I was caretaking father with Alzheimer's for many years, and then it went straight into both my in-laws with heart disease and cancer for 3.5 years, and then it was my mother with her own breast cancer journey. And I was in a cycle of grief I could not get out of. And I look back now and my research shows that long-term grief, that long-term, I'm not talking about 3 months or 6 months, I'm talking about 15 years worth where you can't get out of it, can suppress your immune system. And then you realize basically that all of the things that the Bible talks about that we should be doing, laughing, singing, giving thanks to God, praising God, prayer and meditation, meditating on his word, all these things actually enhance the immune system. And all the negative emotions, anger, worry, fear, which are part of the cancer journey, especially worry and fear, these things suppress the immune system. So if you're in the cancer journey, You want to be enhancing your immune system, not suppressing it by taking the roller coaster ride of fear and worry and just riding that the whole time. I had to get off
Mm.
that roller coaster and set my mind on things above and on God's word and his promises and the good things that I could be grateful for in the middle of me fighting for my life. And that's the best thing a cancer patient can do. You don't look at all the negatives and all the risk factors. Oh, there's risk everywhere you look. It was like, just sign the papers, including death. We just had to laugh at it to a certain degree because you can't concentrate on that. If you're going to fight the battle, you go in and fight it, concentrating on the good things, not all the negatives. Now, another thing that was really powerful in my journey, again, I said I didn't know what had caused my cancer. The doctors didn't know. And I kept searching and asking for tests to be done. And I got involved in a clinical trial study because I bought a sauna. My integrative doctor back home said, look, you got to get all this chemo out of you. And she had found some other heavy metals and things through testing. And so she said, we need to work on this now. And she said, you just need to get a sauna, an infrared sauna. So we got one. And I signed up for the clinical trial study where they were going to test me every so often to see how my levels were doing. I thought they were going to test the same levels my doctor had tested with heavy metals. Oh no, this clinical trial was testing toxic chemicals. I didn't know you could test for that, number one. And number two, I didn't know that they were high in my body until my results came back. I had 15 toxic chemicals in my body: parabens, phthalates, glyphosate, Agent Orange pesticide, not at low levels like my husband had, at high levels, which lets you know that, I was no more exposed than he was, but his filtering systems were working better. So I would get in the sauna more. He sweats easier than I do. We could take a walk. He'll be sweating in 5 minutes. It takes me an hour to start sweating. Sweat is good for you. So I had to get those toxic levels down because many of those toxins that were found at high levels in my body were endocrine disrupting hormones, what we call xenoestrogens, that mimic estrogens. So again, I had no risk factors for the estrogen fed cancer because all the reasons, a lot of them have to do with estrogen dominance, and I didn't have that. What I did have was a high level of chemicals mimicking estrogen. And when I showed the results to my oncologist at the time, he said, this is definitely contributing to why you got cancer. Then my oncologist I got a few years ago read my book, looked at the chapters on lowering your toxic load, and he said, Ginny, I agree with you 100%. This is the best chapters in your book. And he said, I see this as driving many women's and men's breast cancers that are estrogen fed. Then I go to my gynecologist a few months later, and she says the same exact thing. These xenoestrogens are coming in through our water, our food, through products, personal care products and cleaning products we use on our skin. And that's exactly what I could uncovered in my research. But to have two medical doctors agree with me, my own medical doctors, they were seeing the same thing. And I think we've got to look carefully at how we're getting these estrogenic chemical compounds into our body, drinking through plastic water bottles all the time. I don't do that anymore unless it's the only source of water I can get. Then your body needs the hydration more, right? But I have learned, and I show explicitly in my book, how to lower your toxic load and how many toxins. I give an example of in one day. This is what the average woman comes in contact with. Those few pages in my book will shock the living fire out of anyone. And you'll realize that, no, we can't eliminate all toxins. We live in a toxic world, but we can lower our toxic load so that our immune system can work as God intended.
We're all newer to hearing, so some people's initial reaction to this information can feel like toxicities, yeah, oh my goodness, plastic. But it's real, and we don't have to feel overwhelmed by this, but we do need to take those small actions, and sometimes something as simple as, like you're saying, remove a plastic water bottle and put in a metal. We're surrounded by some really great, even cheap metal, go to Target, go to Walmart, you can find one. Our kids' lunch carriers or our own to work, to just grab a metal one that we can throw. So I just think it's interesting. For me, I keep hearing this, so it's finally sinking in that I just think we all just need to get a little open-minded to there's just more out there that we're not all aware of yet. The amount of research you did, and it wasn't doctors feeding you this research initially. This was you going and digging.
Right. It definitely was. And I think that, we don't have to eliminate all toxins. That is just not possible. Don't put that kind of burden on yourself just to lower your toxic load. And some things are easy to do. You can filter your water. That's one of the main ways you can lower your toxic load, is to filter your water further when you get home. Don't consider it the water company's job to completely give you 100% pure water in this toxic day and age. They give it to you bacteria free, and that is important. But once it comes into your home, consider it your responsibility to take it those steps further, so you're drinking more clean water that doesn't have a lot of these chemical pesticides and residues in there. And that's one of the things, we had to do immediately in the cancer journey. My toxic levels are now more in the green level, and I have none in the red level, but I had 15 in the red levels. I mean, that's, and then I had chemotherapy on top of that. So you sit there and you go, oh my, you can see that toxicity, I think, is highly related to many cancers and many diseases, because it distracts the immune system from doing its God-given job.
Mm-hmm.
It is a urine test done at Great Plains Lab. There's the heavy metals test. There is the toxic chemical test. There is glyphosate is a separate test. And so that's actually 3 tests that would be good to do. And your normal doctor doesn't usually have access to these tests, and insurance doesn't pay for them. But to me, it was important to find out what in the world was causing this cancer. And I did find out many things that were causing my cancer that I go into more in depth in the book. I won't know everything. I get to heaven, I'll probably find out the rest of what I couldn't uncover on earth. But the point is, I found out enough that I believe now, if I'd known what I know now, I don't believe I would have gotten breast cancer. And one of the biggest tips I can give anyone to avoid any cancer, especially breast cancer, and even COVID, the bad symptoms, is to take enough vitamin D. 3 doctors told me, had my vitamin D levels been higher as measured by the hydroxy vitamin D test, blood test, I might not have gotten cancer in the first place. Now, if
Do you know how
that
low it was?
is
Do you have a number for us when they initially
they
said it
say
was low?
70 to 90 on that test. And mine were 25 when I was diagnosed. And they say most people are below 30. And some doctors say 50 to 70. My doctors say 70 to 90. And they are allowing me to stay there and keep it there because they're monitoring me every year or so by redoing that test and making sure I'm not going over 100. They don't want you to venture out way past 100 because vitamin D can be toxic at certain levels. But by doing the test every 18 months for 2 years, I'm able to keep it between 70 to 90. And I now know how much I have to take of vitamin D to keep it in those ranges.
Right. And for our listeners' purposes, this can be on your yearly lab draw. You just need to ask. If your physician's not already putting vitamin D on there, you just ask and they say no problem.
Yeah, they do. And usually Medicare and insurance companies pays for it. That's not something I have to pay out of pocket for. So always ask. Press that button with your doctor. Tell them you want to keep your optimum vitamin D levels, and that's the way to do it.
As far as the toxicities, like you said, that's a urine sample. It sounds like you have had it drawn more than once to keep you had it drawn, you saw that you were toxic, you removed things. And I think most of us need to see that, yes, this is working, or no, this isn't working.
Oh, seeing is believing. I wouldn't have believed you before if you had told me I had high toxic levels. But when you see it on paper and you see that graph in front of you and that doctor handed me the results, I mean, I wept. I was like, you've got to be kidding. I look like a toxic dump, and seeing is believing. And then to see those levels, and it it didn't come overnight. Several years later, and they were all in the green zone. I was like, praise God, I will never let these toxic levels get that high again. So I use the sauna once or twice each week. Now I was using it 3 times a week just as prevention. And when you hydrate properly, exercise, eat foods that stimulate your liver, there are a lot of things you can do to lower your toxic load. And so I am, just bent on not, of course, eating organic with a good many fruits and vegetables and things too. But all of it together, I hope not to get my toxic loads ever that high again. But yes,
Mhm.
it was a big part of why I got cancer. And the interesting thing is that breastcancer.org is now mentioning that eating organic fruits and vegetables might be a good idea because of these endocrine disrupting hormones. And cancer, the American Cancer Society has finally said this is something that might be an issue.
And
I think it'll eventually be put as a risk factor, because since I was diagnosed, there were 8 risk factors. Now there's 9. And the 9th is if you have dense breast, they now know it's difficult to diagnose your cancer. I was one of those. 3 mammograms missed my cancer because I have dense breast. And now they know number 2, this is why it's an added risk factor, that people who have dense breast are at higher risk for getting breast cancer. So I would also tell women today, ask your radiologist or your technician next time you go for your mammogram, do I have dense breast? Because if you do, you have added risk, and it's hard for that mammogram to detect. And so you need to press your doctor to use other methods, and you need to be using the self-check methods, because 30 to 40% of women are finding their own breast cancer by doing these monthly checks. And if I hadn't found mine by the providence of God, and I had waited till the next doctor's appointment, I might not be here today with an aggressive cancer. So I really believe in those monthly checks. Pick a day of the month you can always remember and check carefully. Your doctor can teach you how to check, but be proactive. 1 in 8 women are getting breast cancer, estrogen fed, and some men are getting estrogen fed. 90% of the men with breast cancer are estrogen fed. What does that tell you? God didn't make them with that many estrogen hormones. So it's not just their own hormones coming on the inside, it is the outside coming through our skin, what we drink, what we eat. And so I think we've got to look at this carefully, and you'll start seeing more and more about it in the news and in the research. And I do believe it'll eventually be a risk factor for breast cancer.
so shout out to this time and its importance. And were you starting to tell me, what is going along with Breast Cancer Awareness Month?
A lot of educating people and getting them to get mammograms. And I believe in the yearly appointments with your doctor and getting checks. But let me tell you, it's so much more than that. If with 1 in 8 women getting breast cancer, if you don't put a plan of prevention in place, 1 in 2 people getting cancer, period, in this day and age, when you count all the cancers, if you don't put a prevention plan in place, you may be like me, one of the people that had to hear those words, you have cancer. I say don't wait for those words. Put a plan of prevention in place. When you go to the doctor and you get a mammogram, that's catching it early. Wonderful. I applaud that. Or if you get a thermogram or an ultrasound, whatever detection method is best for you. But you've also got to put some things to prevent in place, because you don't want to get that news, because all these doors open you don't want to open. And so I think the best thing for people to do with the high rates of cancer in our country today, that's 1 in 2 people getting cancer in the generation born today, put a plan of prevention in place for your family. Filter your water, eat blueberries, clean up your diet, exercise as a family. Look at the things in my book. I give 3 categories. For people who want to prevent, do X, Y, and Z. For people in the cancer journey, add this. For people who are high risk, it'll come back, add this, this, and this. And the first level I give in the book, barely cost a dime. Most of these things are free. And so for the average person trying to prevent cancer, there are things your family can do that don't cost a dime.
That's wonderful. Where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon. It's called Unleash Your God-Given Healing, 8 Steps to Prevent and Survive Cancer. It's also on my website, at www.Ginny, Ginny, Brandt, B as in boy, RANT.com. I also have a cancer prevention and wellness blog they can sign up for. And I just posted yesterday about flax seeds, how flax seeds are a gal's best friend. People say diamonds, but flax seeds are a nutritional powerhouse that do so many things for our bodies. And actually, it's good for men too. But I will post weekly on that blog, and you can sign up to get the emails.
That's fabulous. That's good to know. I can also repost out some of your blog on my social media as well. And everything that you just mentioned will be in the show notes for any of our listeners who weren't able to get it jotted down quick enough. We thank you for coming on and sharing all of your research and your journey. I know that you've affected many people today. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lindsey, for having me and helping me to get this very important message out there, especially during Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Yes. Thank you.